Hey everybody, Twin Dad here, and welcome back to Magium. This is the second chapter, and I will be continuing it on from here. Listen, Araka, Darren says, as we walk towards the arena, are you absolutely sure that the Eden you fought during the still winter is the same person as the one we're dealing with now? I mean, it's been 600 years, right? No one would blame me if you were to make a confusion after all this time. Damn it, this is the third time you've asked me this exact same question, Iraq says. Yes, it's the same Eden from 600 years ago. Get it through your thick skull already. Darren, why are you finding it so hard to believe? Kate says. We already knew that he was 600 years old, and that he was an old acquaintance of Araka and the Golden Fox. Given his power, it wasn't that big of a stretch to assume that he was the one who defeated Araka all that time ago. It's not the fact that he could beat Araka that I find hard to believe, Darren says. It's the fact that he is known as the founder of this continent civilization, when all we've seen him do so far is wreak havoc, for the sole purpose of his amusement. People change over time, Kate says. Correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't Eden tell you when you first met that the reason he is keeping his eyes closed is because he got tired of seeing the ugliness of humanity? You've seen the way he acted around the Earl and the ambassadors of Olendor. It's clear that he no longer holds anything other than disgust and disdain for the inhabitants of Varathia. Leaving Eden aside, I say, shouldn't we rather be discussing our plans for the arena? Don't worry about the arena, Hadric says. I alone should be more than enough to deal with whatever the ambassador can throw at us. Oh yeah, I say? And what if they separate us? Barry makes a good point, Darren says. The first thing we need to make sure of is that we can still communicate with each other, even if they decide to throw us in different cells. Darren takes off his backpack, and then he takes 3 transceivers out of it. Kate, Hadric, Flower, take these, he says, as he gives us each of them. As he gives each one of them a transceiver. Barry, you already have a transceiver. I don't think I've shown you this before, but you have a dial on the right side of your transceiver that you can use to change your calling frequency in order to match the signature frequency of one of the other transceivers. Does everyone see the dial I'm talking about? Yes, we all answer. Good, Darren says. Each of the transceivers is assigned a number, which corresponds to its own unique signature frequency. Make sure you memorize everyone else's number so you know who to contact when the need arises. The numbers are engraved on the back of the transceivers. I look at the back of my transceiver and I see that I am assigned the number 2. When we exchange our numbers, I learn that Kate was number 3, Flower was number 4, and Hadric was number 5. Alright, Darren says. Now that you all know your numbers, as an aside, if you ever need to communicate with transceivers that weren't enchanted by me, there's a small button next to the dial which you can use to switch to normal frequencies. I'll be using the transceiver with the number 6. What about number 1, I ask? That's the number of the transceiver I was using originally, Darren says, the one that Rose is using now. So, do we know for sure that they're going to allow us to keep our transceivers after we get sent to our cells, Hadric asks. You'll be allowed to keep any items you wish, the king's servant says, having overheard our discussion. You'll each have your own personal cells in which you can store your belongings, but you will be allowed to carry items with you as well. What about weapons, Darren asks. Are we allowed to use our own weapons and armor during the fights in the arena? Yes, as long as your weapons don't cast any spells, you are allowed to use any weapons you have at your disposal, the servant says. What do you understand by casting spells, I ask. Would an item that enchants your physical abilities be considered spellcasting? It depends on the nature of the item, the servant says. Without knowing what item in particular you're referring to, I cannot give you a definite answer to your question. Don't tell him about stat device. No. Oh, okay, I say. Never mind then. Hey, Barry, Darren says, and both me and the king's servant turn our heads towards him. How long can we delay our trip to the arena, Darren says. Looking at the king's servant. Can it wait a half hour? I was thinking that I could cast some basic sharpness and durability enchantments on my friend's daggers if I find a shop that sells even elven steel along the way. There's enough time, the king's servant says. If you're looking for a shop that sells enchanting materials, there should be one in the marketplace we'll be reaching shortly. Why do you need elven steel specifically, I ask Aaron. Elven steel is the best quality steel that money can buy, Darren says, and basic enchantments like sharpness and durability are highly dependent on the quality of the materials used for enchantment. Is there any chance you could enchant my crossbow as well, I ask? You are not allowed to use ranged weapons within the arena of Varathia, the king's servant says. I'll be honest with you, Barry, Darren tells me. Even if ranged weapons were allowed, I would still not recommend getting your crossbow enchanted. It would be much better to buy a new one. Basic enchantments just isn't a good substitute for poor craftsmanship. With daggers, it's different because the quality of the metal is much more important than the way the blade was made. Why do you keep talking about basic enchantments? Hadric says. Aren't you supposed to be one of the most skilled enchanters in the world? Why don't you just cast some of those crazy enchantments you have on your sword on Barry and Kate's daggers? Darren frowns at him. The more advanced the enchantment, the more time and resources it requires, he says. It would take me weeks to cast the enchantments I use on my sword, and it would cost a small fortune to acquire the needed materials. I doubt that I'll be doing anything other than basic enchantments for the duration of this tournament. Barry, Kate, give me your daggers. I will enchant them both as soon as we reach the shop. Once he found the shop, Darren went in, and he didn't come out until exactly a half hour had passed. During this time, I used my transceiver to contact Rose and tell her that we wouldn't make it home in time for dinner tonight. She was shocked at first, but after she heard the whole story, she was relieved that we were at least given a chance to free ourselves. She then promised me that she will be there in the audience to cheer for us when the time comes. After Darren got out of the shop, he gave Kate her dagger, and then he stopped in front of me and with his hand held out, looking as if he were expecting some sort of payment. That'll be 10 gold coins, Darren says. You can pay it with the money from the Western Continent if you want. You're charging me money, I ask him, a little surprised. Well, what did you expect, Darren says. It's not like I was given all the Elven Seal for free, you know. But you didn't ask Kate for any money, I say. That's because I didn't happen to see her pocketing a few dozen expensive gems in a certain ogre fortress a few days ago, Darren says. You, on the other hand, should have money to spare. So that's how it is, I say with a grin. Cough it up, Darren says, with his hand still held out. Fine, fine, I say. I place 10 gold coins into Darren's palm and then take back my dagger. It took us about 2 more hours to get out from the marketplace to the arenas. Once we reached our destination, we waved goodbye to the king's servant, and then we went inside a small building near the arena which we were told was the main office. The room we entered looked more like the inside of a prison than an office, but there was a man sitting at the desk in front of us, who seemed to be arranging some papers when we came in. The man paid us no mind until he finished what he was doing, and then he got up and greeted us with a curt nod. I was told you'd be coming here tonight, he says, in a disinterested tone. Only 3 of you will be participating, am I correct? 4, Hadric says, with a wide grin, as he hands his admission letter from the king's to the desk worker. I see, the desk worker says, after he reads the letter. Very well then. Given that I am only one who is still working at this late hour, I'll have to ask you to wait patiently in this lobby while I lead each one of you to your individual cells. Can't we all just go at once, Hadric asks. No, the desk worker says. The ambassador of Olendor insisted that neither of you are to know the locations of each other's cells. He also made sure that each of you is placed into separate divisions, so you cannot work together during the arena events. Divisions? Darren asked, confused. We'll start with the Lesethai, the desk worker says, ignoring Darren. He walks to a door behind him, and then he turns to me. This way, he says. I take one last look at everyone else, and then I follow the desk worker. Good luck, Barry, Flower shouts as I head through the door. Me and Petal will be cheering you from the audience, and I'm sure Rocket will too. Once the door closes behind me, I start to walk slowly behind the desk worker. As we both begin to make our way down the very long flight of stairs, we didn't exchange any words. While we were traveling the dark corridors beneath the arenas. With all the twists and turns we took, it was hard to tell if I could still find my way back myself. The torches inside the underground tunnels were dimly lit, and all the doors looked the same. After a long period of silence, the desk worker finally chooses to speak. There are currently 2 empty cells to your left in your division, he says. Cell number 3 and cell number 5. They are located on opposite sides of the recreational arena. I haven't been ordered to place you in any specific cell of the 2. Which one would you prefer? I don't know, I say. What's the difference between the 2? There's no difference, the desk worker says bluntly. No difference at all, I ask. None whatsoever. So why are you asking me then? I'm asking you so you can make a decision. Now choose which will it be. Cell number 3 or cell number 5? I'm going to choose 5. For no reason. I guess I'll go with cell number 5 then, I say. Very well, the desk worker says. Cell number 5 is located on the right side of the recreational arena. Its number is written on the door. He stops in front of the door, and he pulls a key out of his pocket. This is the key to your cell, he says, as he hands me the key. You are advised to leave your belongings inside your cell and to lock the door when you are away. You can choose to spend most of your time locked inside your individual cell if you wish, but you will be required to spend at least 2 hours a day in the recreational arena during the recreational period, in order to learn to get along with your teammates. The desk worker then pulls out another key of his pocket, and he uses it to open the door in front of him. This door will lead you to the recreational arena from your division, he says. I recommend you go directly to sleep because your next recreational period is scheduled for tomorrow morning. I nod to him and then go through the open door. Farewell, the desk worker says as he closes the door behind me. The room I am now finding myself in is only being lit by a few candles. The recreational arena appears to be empty, except for one particular bulky man wearing leather armor who is now steadily approaching me. I've been waiting for you, the man says, in a menacing tone. I heard they'd be bringing you in tonight. Do I know you? I ask him, confused. No, I don't see why you would, the bulky man says as he steps a few feet in front of me. I don't know who you are either. Then why are you waiting for me, I say. Because I've heard the guards talking, the man says. They were talking about a group of mages who killed the Earl of Ollendor, and I heard them say that a member of the group would be sent to our division tonight. I'll have to admit that I wasn't expecting a Stillwater. I remain silent. There would be no point in correcting him. I'd much rather have everyone think that I'm an all-powerful Stillwater than give away the fact that I'm not a mage at all. It doesn't matter, though, the bulky man continues. You may as well be one of the 4 sages, for all good it will do you. Magic is not allowed here. I could very well crush your puny head with my bare hands, and you wouldn't be able to do anything about it. Now, why would you want to do that, I ask him. Aren't we supposed to be part of the same team? The man's face contorts to a snarl at the sound of my words. Do you have any idea what you've done, you little bastard, the man shouts. Nope, I say. No idea whatsoever. Why don't you explain it to me? Oh, I'll explain it to you, the man says, grinding his teeth. Your little stunt with that noble has sealed all of our fates. I heard the guards saying that the next arena event will be the greatest of all history in Varathia. They're not expecting any of us to make it out alive. They're sending us all to our deaths just to make sure that they kill you in the process. The man is now clenching his fist so hard that blood is starting to drip out of it. While the 2 of us were talking, the doors leading to the individual cells were opened one by one, and the people who had been woken up by the sound of the bulky man's voice are now stepping out of the rooms to watch the show. The only reason why I came to Thelius, the bulky man says, was because I heard the Gnome King would rarely let the arena events in the city endanger the lives of the gladiators. I came here because I thought there was some easy money to be made. But now I'm just sitting here waiting for my execution, cursing my fate, cursing you. Then why don't you just leave, I say. You think I didn't try, the man shouts, even louder than before. The owner of the arena isn't letting any of us go. It's the first time in years when he's been allowed to make the show as deadly as he wants. Do you know what? He's been collecting rare beasts and keeping them underground in underground tunnels for the past 10 years, waiting for a chance to parade them in front of the audience. Well, now that he's finally been given permission, the man is planning to make us fight every single one of them. He wants to make this the crowning moment of his career. He doesn't care about what the King of Thelius will do to him if he goes overboard. As long as one show is successful, he may well die, for all he cares, and so can we. Get a hold of yourself, I tell him. You're acting as if we were being sent to the gallows, not a gladiatorial event. I didn't come here to waste time, wallowing in self-pity. I came here to win. After hearing what I had to say, the bulky man completely loses self-control he had left and swings his right fist at my face with full force. Ooh. Ooh! I react just in time and I manage to get out of the way before his arm reaches me. My attacker wastes no time, and he attempts to hit me again, and this time with his left fist. I stumble a bit because I didn't properly regain my footing after dodging his last strike, but I get to avoid his next blow just the same. For the next half minute, the bulky man unleashes a fury of punches on me in an attempt to catch me off guard at least once. However, even if at certain points it seems as if I was about to slip up, I always somehow manage to regain my balance and to miraculously avoid getting hit, even if it might seem like impossible for anyone watching the fight. After he realizes he isn't getting anywhere, the bulky man stops attacking me, and he just stands there watching me for a few seconds. Now I understand where your confidence is coming from, he says in disgust. I see that you can handle yourself pretty well, even without your magic. But I don't make the mistake of thinking that you can just avoid fighting forever. The arena event won't be over until either of you or the monsters are dead. Don't worry, I say. Dodging isn't the only thing I'm good at. We'll see, the bulky man says. And then he turns away from me and heads towards his cell. Of the 4 people who are watching the spectacle of our fight, 2 are now going back to their cells. 1 is heading towards me, and the last one is still standing by the door, watching me intently. The one who's heading towards me is a man about my age, who is wearing his hair in a ponytail, and who has a way of smiling that reminds me of Eden. The one that remained by the door watching me is a girl with long silver hair, who appears to be no older than 20. The man with the ponytail stops in front of me and smiles politely. I see that you're able to hold your own against Bruce even without your magic, he says. Impressive. Not many would dare face him head on like you did just now. May I ask your name? Yeah, it's Barry, I say. Barry, the man asks, a little surprised. That's an unusual name for a mage. So I've been told. Forgive me, I didn't mean to sound rude. It's just that most of the mages I've met in the past have had very unique names. Most parents who find out they have a mage in the family feel that they need to show it off in any way they can. So they usually give him a pretentious sounding name like Zalnir or Vizaroth. It's almost like a tradition. But to give you such a common name as Barry? My parents have never been the type to follow tradition. I see, the man says, smiling, as he extends his hand towards me. My name is Wilhelm. Pleased to meet you. As I start to shake the man's hand, I suddenly get a vision of him stabbing me in the back with an orange-hilted dagger in the middle of the arena. Is something wrong? Wilhelm asks me, as he sees my expression on my face. No, everything's fine, I tell him, as I quickly regain my composure. Listen, Wilhelm says, you know that you haven't really gotten the best receptions here in our division, but I personally think there's nothing worse than having a fight with a teammate before a life-threatening event such as this. I just want to let you know that I'm on your side. Nah, I'm gonna act casual, since I probably have the premonition and speed and all that stuff. I don't have much reflexes or toughness, so that might be a problem. It's good to know that you're watching my back, Wilhelm, I say. Well, that's all I wanted to say for tonight, Wilhelm says. We should both go to sleep. I hear that the recreation period is starting early tomorrow. Yes, I've heard that too, I say. Have a good night. Same to you, Wilhelm says, as he starts heading towards his cell. An orange-hilted dagger, huh? If my memory doesn't fail me, there are a special kind of enchanted daggers that are used by trained assassins to help conceal their presence. I'd better be careful around this guy. After Wilhelm closes his door, the girl with the silver hair watches me for another few seconds, and then she also goes inside her room, shutting the door behind her. I decide that there's no use in lingering around any longer, so I head towards my room as well. When I get inside my cell, I see that the only piece of furniture available to me is a bed made entirely out of stone. I lock the door with the key I got from the desk worker. I throw my backpack on the ground, and then I go sit on my bed. The only source of light in the room appears to be coming from a very small window above me, which gives me a direct view towards the corridor outside the recreational area. There doesn't seem to be any movement in the tunnels outside my cell. The guards must either be sleeping or patrolling a different corridor. I take a sweater out of my backpack and I use it as a makeshift pillow to put on my cold stone bed. As soon as I place my head on it, I fall asleep, and I wake up about 7 hours later to the sound of a guard's voice coming from outside my cell. Get up, the guard says. It's recreation time. Go recreate. Come on, get out of here. I reluctantly get out of bed, put my sweater in my backpack, and then head towards the recreation area. I make sure to lock the door behind me on the way out, and then I head towards a center of the room where there are no people around. I take a quick look around the room to see who else are placed in my division. Aside from Bruce and Wilhelm, who I met yesterday, there's a silver-haired girl that was staring at me, and there are 2 more individuals that look both like the gladiator versions of Cutthroat Dave. The 2 thugs seem to be the only ones who are actually talking to each other. The other 3 are standing somewhere as far as possible from everywhere else, leaning on their backs against the walls, their arms crossed, waiting for the recreation period to be over. What am I supposed to do now? I can't say that I feel like talking to any of these people. What is there to talk about? We weren't even told what the first round will be like. How are we supposed to make a strategy? Maybe I should just go back and get a book to read or something. As I stand there and think about going back to my cell, Wilhelm suddenly moves away from the wall and he starts heading towards me. When he stops in front of me, I see that he had an unusually determined look in his eye. Good morning, Wilhelm says. I've got some news for you that I think you might find useful. From what I've heard, in a few hours, the ambassador and the arena's owner should be discussing important matters about the organization of the arena events. The guard from this place has a habit of overhearing these types of conversations, and they usually like to discuss them amongst themselves. Make sure that you pay close attention to what they are saying when they're outside your cell. I will do the same. That's interesting, I say. I'll keep that in mind. All right, Wilhelm says. That's all I wanted to tell you. I'll make sure to let you know if I hear anything. I hope you do the same. Of course, I say. I suddenly realized that the girl with the silver hair was staring at me again. In fact, I think she's been staring at me for a long time. Wilhelm notices me looking towards the girl and he gives me a smirk. I would waste my time trying to talk to that one, Wilhelm says. We've all tried, but she wouldn't say a word. I think that our little silver-haired princess is either mute or she's taken a vow of silence of some sort. Either way, I doubt you'll get anything out of her. He then bows politely and he goes back towards his corner of the room. As Wilhelm walks past the girl on his way back, she pays him no mind and she keeps looking directly at me. Okay, now I'm certain that she's doing it on purpose. But what does she want from me? Does she want me to go talk to her? I guess there's only one way to find out. I calmly start heading towards her, while paying close attention to her reactions. The girl seems unfazed by my decision to approach her, and she keeps looking at me in the eyes even after I stop in front of her. Now that I take a better look at this girl, I see that she is at least one head shorter than me, and she has a very frail constitution. She has a very frail constitution. I could see why Wilhelm would choose to call her a princess. She definitely doesn't look like a fighter. Her clothes, however, are nothing close to what a princess might wear. She's wearing a simple beige blouse, short leggings, and seemed comfortable to move in, and wooden sandals. Despite her frail-looking body, the girl is wearing 2 knives on her belt, and her arms and legs are full of bruises, which indicates she had likely been in a fight shortly before she was incarcerated. Seeing that the girl has no intention of saying anything, I take it upon myself to initiate a conversation. So are you going to tell me why you've been staring at me for the past 5 minutes? I ask her bluntly. The girl gives me no sign of having heard me, and she keeps looking at me without any change in her expression. Well, I say, aren't you going to say anything? Still no response. Wilhelm was right. This is pointless. I turn away to leave, but I suddenly feel something pulling on my sleeve. When I turn back, I see the girl is now holding me by the shirt sleeve, and there is a blue-colored writing floating in midair in front of her face. The writing is in common language, and it simply says, "Wait." The writing then disappears and is replaced by a new text, this time saying, "Is it true what they say about you?" What do you mean? I asked the girl. What did they say about me? Just like before, the previous phrase is now being replaced by a new text, which says, "They say the reason that you were brought here is because you attacked a noble. Is that true?" Yes, that would be the main gist of it, I say. But why attack a noble? The blue writing in the air says. Didn't you know that how dangerous it would be to attack a noble in Varathia, let alone kill one? We did, I say, but we were trying to free a slave, and either way, that bastard had it coming. The writing disappears again, but this time there's a short pause before the next text appears. You don't seem to like our nobles very much, do you? The writing says. Oh, I hate them with a passion, I say. The girl smiles. It is the first time I see an actual change in her facial expression. I see, the writing says. Please allow me to introduce myself. My name is Lilia. Lila? Lila. I have been brought here because I tried to free a slave from a noble. The girl then extends her hands towards me. I'm Barry, I say, as I shake her hand. Pleased to meet you. Barry, I have a favor to ask of you, the writing says. Could we continue our conversation inside my cell? There's something else I want to ask you, and I'd rather do it in private. Sure, I'll go into a girl cell. No problem. Alright, let's go, I say. Leila nods, and she opens the door to her cell, as we both enter her room. I noticed the fact that Wilhelm was watching us attentively, and there was a bit of disappointment on his face when he saw that I accepted the girl's request so easily. It is only after Leila locks the door that I suddenly start to feel a sense of danger, and I jump back for watching her carefully. What are you doing? Leila writes, looking at me, confused. I'm trying to tell if this is a trap or not, I tell her. A trap? Leila writes, with a somewhat shocked expression on her face. For what purpose? Aren't you aware that killing or critically injuring a member of your own division is against the rules? Not really, I tell her. Nobody bothered to tell me the rules of the arena before coming here. But it's one of the standard rules of all the arenas in Varathia, Leila writes. I'm not from around here, remember I say. Leila sighs, and she goes to sit on her bed. In that case, Leila writes, you'd better take care to also not harm the organizers or any of the spectators. That is against the rules as well. Nice to know. Are there any other standard arena rules that I should be aware of, I ask. Yes, Leila writes. Magic and ranged weapons are not allowed in the arena. and neither are items that can cast any spells. But don't worry, your stat booster doesn't count as a spellcasting item. The magic detectors in the arena will ignore it. The girl laughs as she sees the look on my face. Even her laughter is silent. Yes, I know about her stat device, Leela writes, while smiling. How? I ask her. Leela pulls a small trinket out of her pocket and she shows it to me. It's a stat device, just like my own. You see, my stat booster is a little special, Leela writes. Not only does it allow me to transform my thoughts into written words at will, but it also lets me know when there are other stat devices in the area. My father is the one who made these modifications. When you first came here, I almost bought your Stillwater story, but when I saw that you had a stat booster with you, I knew at once that you were a Lesithai. There would have been no point in carrying such a device with you unless you are part of the only race that it was designed to work for. But the same goes for you, doesn't it? I ask her, starting to finally understand what's going on, which means that you are also Lesithai. Layla nods. Then how come you are here in the arena, I say? I had the impression that the Lesithai have a higher status than nobility on this continent. Can't your father just pull some strings in order to have you released? Leela looks down at the ground for a few seconds before her new text appears. My father and I are outcasts, she writes. We aren't treated the same way as the other Lesithai. We've been in hiding for years, but a few months ago, my father sold me to a noble and made into a slave. The reason why I'm here is because they caught me yesterday, shortly after I managed to rescue him. I see, I say. After they enslaved him, I never thought I'd see him again. But a week ago, when the tournament began, I started receiving my first stat points, and I finally felt like I had a chance to free him. I waited until I could upgrade my speed, strength, and combat technique stats to their maximum level of 3. Then I single-handedly defeated all the guards holding my father prisoner. I only wished I'd waited until I could invest a little toughness as well. Leela then shows me the bruises on her arms and legs. After I freed my father, Leela continues, I made him promise that even if I got captured, he'd go to Olendor without me, and wait for me there. Olendor is the only remaining city of Varathia where the Lesithai hold no power. In Olendor, we would be safe from them, but the city's guards caught me before I could get to the city. I held them off until my father could escape, but I was already weakened from the previous battle, and I could not beat them all. In the end, they tied me up and sent me here. I arrived in this cell yesterday in the afternoon, not long before you made your appearance. You mentioned that you had to wait until you could max your speed, strength, and combat technique, and that your current maximum level is 3, I say. But wouldn't that mean you only had 9 available stat points until yesterday? Yes, and I still do, Leela writes. That is the reason why I wanted to talk to you in private. When I first saw how quickly I was gaining my stat points of 1 week ago, I was amazed. But that was only because I did not know about the tournament. Apparently, it had been announced many times in the past few months, but it's easy to miss these kinds of announcements when you live mostly on the outskirts of the city in order to avoid detection. It was yesterday in the afternoon when the Gnome King announced the first rounds of objectives that I first found out about the tournament. This made me realize how much magical energy there really is around us. I would have expected the stat booster to gather a lot more energy, given these circumstances. What I wanted to ask you is how many points did you get to spend on your stats until now? 19 points, I answer her. 19, Leela writes, looking somewhat shocked. She pauses. Then I suppose that my assumption is correct. Leela writes, It really is harder for a stat booster to collect energy inside the city. I've been noticing that too, I tell her. I've only gotten 2 points since I entered the city, but I used to get points a lot faster before, unless I was traveling through completely deserted areas. Maybe it's just because there aren't very many mages from the tournament who found their way in the city. Perhaps, Leela writes, or perhaps it's because there are other stat devices wielders in the city, and the energy is being split equally among us. You think there might be other Lesithai using stat devices in the city? I don't know. It's a possibility. Can I have a look at your stat booster, please? Yeah, sure, I guess, I say, as I take my stat device out of my pocket and show it to her. The girl gives the device a long, pondering look before she writes again. Thank you. I wanted to see how fast your stat booster is gathering energy compared to mine. Yours is working a little better, but not enough to justify 10 points difference between us. You can tell that just by looking at it, I ask her. No, of course not, Leela writes. Not by looking. I could tell by sensing the flow of magical aura, or energy, surrounding it. Can't you? Well, I guess I can sort of feel the flow of it, I say, but there's no way I could tell which one of our two devices is gathering more than the other. That's strange, Leela writes. If you can't even tell the difference between our two devices, then how do you know the stat division was designed to work for Lestithai before coming to this tournament? From what you've told me, it doesn't seem like you are acquainted with any of the other Lestithai. So you must have discovered it on your own somehow. Unless, Leela pauses. Unless you had absolutely no idea how powerful the device would really be, Leela continues, and you were planning to keep pretending that you were Stillwater until the end of the tournament, with your stat device only as a backup plan. Actually, to be honest, before coming here, I didn't even know that I was a Lestithai. You mean you thought you were human? Yeah, that's what I meant, I say. Leela starts to giggle silently, while covering her mouth with her hand. I can't believe how crazy you are, Leela writes. No one in their right mind would even think of trying to bluff their way through a tournament like this. Now I understand why you seem so calm. Even after you've heard the arena's owner is preparing for us, this is just another regular day for you, isn't it? Well, I don't know if I'd go so far as to call it regular, I say. This is only the third time I've been thrown into a prison since I came to Varathia. There's still room for improvement. Hey, you two, I hear a guy shouting from the window of Leela's cell. You can have all the private conversations you want in your own free time. This is the recreation period. Get back outside. Aye, aye, sir, I say, and we both head back towards the recreation arena. Once we're out, we both get back to our original positions without saying another word to each other. We've already said what we need to say, and there's no reason to give Wilhelm any more opportunity to spy on our conversations. The rest of the recreation period was spent in silence. There was nothing for us to discuss about the upcoming fights, and nobody seemed to be in the mood for idle chatter. Since we couldn't just stand and do nothing for 2 hours, each of us tried to find something to occupy our time with. Bruce started doing push-ups. Wilhelm chose to sharpen his dagger. I spent my time reading from my notebook, and two thugs decided to play some dice. Leela seemed to be the only one content with simply standing there, gazing at an empty wall in front of her until the recreation period ended. As soon as the recreation period was over, we all went quietly back to our cells and continued to read from my notebook for a few more hours after leaving the recreation area. I've been reading through my notes about various creatures that I've come across in my studies, but there are so many of them that it's difficult to memorize all the information by heart. I still remember the day when I enchanted this notebook. It was the day when I decided to begin my journey around the world. It hopes of finding a way to become a mage. The enchantment cost me a fortune, but it was still a lot cheaper than enchanting my backpack, and it was more than what I needed for my intents and purposes. A notepad with an endless number of pages. Was there any other tool that could have served me better for my quest of knowledge? I suppose not. I skimmed through the pages again, trying to guess which of the creatures in the arena's owner is more likely to throw at us. There are harpies, wargs, wyverns, I think it's a dragon if I'm not mistaken, three-headed hounds, mammoths, giant spiders, giant eagles. The list is endless. And let's not forget that each type of creature has its own subcategories that cannot be ignored. Because they are sometimes wildly different from each other. You can have red spiders, green spiders, white-spotted black spiders, and even 10-legged spiders, each of them with their own unique behaviors and weaknesses. Yeesh. Now that I think about it, Bruce mentioned that the arena's owner was fond of dangerous creatures. But does that mean that he might be keeping monsters of the humanoid type and all in here as well? Monsters might be treated as if they are all mindless creatures by most people, but there really is a little different. Monsters of the humanoid variety are generally much more intelligent than the average creature. Some of them are even organized in tribes, and they can communicate advanced information with each other through their own language. Even if most of them don't speak common, the ogre from the fort were one such example. If they have any monsters here that are as strong as an ogre captain or the shaman, we might be in for one hell of a fight. As I sit on my bed and read, I suddenly hear a man's voice coming from my cell's window. Greetings, the voice says. I turn around and see if I can get a glimpse of the man's face, but he's hiding behind the walls outside my cell. Do I know you? I ask him. No, the voice says, but I heard there was a fellow Lestithai among the prisoners who were brought here yesterday, so I came to pay you a visit. A fellow Lestithai, you say, I tell him. Yes, the voice says, I am here to offer you a deal. Normally, we do not deal with criminals, but since you are a Lestithai, I believe there is only fair to give you a second chance. He pauses. Go on, I say. You see, the voice continues, we couldn't help but notice that the king of Thelis, seemed to have placed an unusual amount of trust in you and your companions. Enough trust to invite you to a secret room below the throne. That is not the kind of invitation that is acquired easily. He pauses again. To see if I have anything to say, he waits for a few more seconds, and then he continues from where he left off. The deal that we want to offer you is simple, the voice says. All you need to do is convince the king to let you into his secret room again while carrying one of our devices. Is this device of yours a bomb by any chance, I ask him? The voice laughs softly. Of course not. If we want to assassinate the king, I assure you there would be much easier, risk-free methods in order to get the job done. Then what is it you are trying to do? We are trying to subvertly interfere with the way that one of the gnome's own devices works. One of the gnome king's inventions is currently making his secret room completely soundproof, which stops us from listening in on his private conversations. However, at the moment, we do not have any agents that the king trusts enough to allow him access to his secret room. This is why we turn to you. We are not asking you to do this for free, of course. There are ways in which we could make your fights here in the arena much easier for you. All you need to do is agree to help us, and we will take care of the rest. There is no way I could agree to take this deal after I already convinced everyone to help me rid the king of Lesthai in the city. Then again, this guy is saying that all I need to do in order to get my reward is to agree to help him. Since I'm going to attack them later anyway, I guess I wouldn't have much to lose if I lied to him now. Ooh. Nah. No thanks, I say. I keep things challenging. There's a brief pause during which none of us say anything. Is this your final answer? The Lesthai asks me. Sure, I say. The Lesthai doesn't say anything for a few more seconds, but then he answers me in the same calm manner as before. Very well then, Lesthai says. In that case, I look forward to seeing your performance in the arena. I doubt that we'll be seeing each other again. Farewell, fellow Lesthai. With these last words, the Lesthai makes his departure. I wait for a minute to make sure that he's gone for good, and then I get back to reading my notebook. Not long after the Lesthai leaves, I start to hear some voices in a distant hallway outside my cell. I recognize one of the voices as that of the guard who woke me up this morning. Hey, did you hear about this morning's meeting, the guard says. The one where the owner and the ambassador, the other says. Yeah, the guard says. I heard that they're bringing out the Minotaur for round 2. The Minotaur, the voice asks. Shocked? You mean the undefeated champion of the arena? The one and only, the guard says, and I heard that they're also going to use the giant scorpions and the manticores for round 1. What about round 3, the voice says. Will there still be duels between the gladiators? Yeah, their survivors will have to fight each other in one-on-one duels at the end, the guard says, but nobody is expecting any of them to make it past round 1. The last phrase was barely audible, as the guards were getting further and further away from me while they talked. The last thing I hear from them is the roaring of their laughter, as their voices fade away completely. Scorpions and manticores, huh? It's a good thing that I've got extensive notes written about them in my notebook. At least we won't go in completely unprepared. I spend the rest of the afternoon reading from my notes. When I feel like taking a break, I call Darren, Kate, and Hadrick through the transceivers to find out how they're doing. Darren told me that he couldn't stand any of his teammates, and that they were all cowardly mercenaries who had come here to make some easy money. Kate said that she almost killed one of her teammates during a recreation period, and that she only stopped when she found out it was against the rules. No one had tried to pick a fight with her since. Hadrick seems to be doing a little better. From what he told me, he'd already made most of his teammates into drinking buddies, and they were spending a lot of time in the recreation area than the 2 daily hours they were required to. I also made sure to tell my friends everything that I heard from the 2 guards earlier, as well as the weaknesses and behaviors of each type of scorpions and manticores that I knew. Hopefully this information will help them out in some way. After I finished talking to everyone, I got back to my reading, and I kept doing that until late in the evening, when I was interrupted by a creak of the door, and by the sound of a familiar voice. Farewell, I hear the disinterested voice in the desk worker coming from the recreation area. Wow. Farewell, I hear the disinterested voice of the desk worker coming from the recreation area as the door slams shut. I immediately realize what this means, and I open the door of my cell to see who the newest member of our division is. The man who just entered the recreation area is simply radiating magical energy, and he makes no attempt of hiding it. However, he does not appear to be one of the tournament's participants, because I am seeing warning signs above his head, telling me not to hurt him. He must be one of the local mages. Judging from the look on his face, it's clear that he didn't come here of his own free will, so he's likely been sent here because he broke the Varathian law in some way. The mage notices me, but he doesn't bother to acknowledge my presence, and he goes directly to his room. The rest of the day was mostly uneventful, except for a drunk call that I got from Hadric on his transceiver, who insisted on passing me to one of his teammates because of the funny way in which he impersonated a famous noble from the Western continent. The next morning, I was woken up by the same guard from the previous day, telling me that the recreation period had started. Wakey, wakey, the guard says, it's recreation time. I open the door of my cell and start heading towards an empty area of the recreation room, just like yesterday. As I walk, I overhear the two thugs from my division talking loudly several feet away from me, and I turn around to see what's going on. It looks like they're talking to Leela, as she is casually leaning her back against the wall, watching them silently. Hey, Princess, one of the thugs says. How about you take us both to your room, like you did with the Stillwater yesterday? Yeah, the other thug says. We have some very important tactical information we'd like to discuss with you. Leela continues to look at them without saying anything. The first thug who spoke concludes that he wasn't being intimidating enough, so he places both his hands on the wall behind her, as he leans closer to her face. Listen, Princess, the thug says. You could drop the silent act. I know you can understand me, so you'd better wise up and do what I say, or else I'm going to hurt you so bad that you wish you... The thug didn't get to finish his sentence because Leela decided she had enough, and she punched him so hard in the stomach that the man fell down and started rolling on the floor in pain. You bitch, the other thug says, as he pulls out his knife, but he doesn't get a chance to use it because a sudden kick from Leela sends him flying to a nearby wall. By the gods, that was amazing, we hear Bruce shout from the other end of the room. He rushes over to Leela as he grabs her by both her shoulders. Leela looks a bit shocked, but she quickly realizes there's no ill intent behind the man's actions, so she doesn't attack him. With strength like that, you could take out a small battalion by yourself, Bruce says, enthusiastically. How did they even manage to capture you? Suddenly, Bruce realizes that he got carried away too much, and then he releases Leela from her grasp. I'm sorry, Bruce says. Whoops. Oh, boy. I know that you don't like to talk, but I just want you to know that I've got your back. Whenever you feel like you're in a pinch in the arena, remember you can count on me to help. That's all I wanted to say. Leela looks a little confused, but she nods slowly in the acknowledgement of his words. All right then, Bruce says. I'll be over here if you need me. He then turns away from her and goes back to his end of the room. The thug that got punched in the stomach managed to get back on his feet, and he's now rushing towards his fallen comrade, who still hasn't woken up from the collision with the wall. Eventually, he manages to wake him up, and then they both walk towards the corner of the room, without even daring to glance back towards Leela on their way back. Nothing else happened during the 2-hour-long recreation period. The mage from yesterday isolated himself, just like everyone else, and he hasn't exchanged a single word with anyone. I would have expected Wilhelm to welcome him to the division, like he did with me, but it seems like he didn't consider him worth the bother. After we return to our cells, I go sit on my bed, and I open my notebook. Not long after I start reading, I hear 3 light knocks on my door. Who is it? I ask. A few seconds later, there are 3 more knocks at the door, with a little louder than the last ones. It's probably the girl. Tell them that I'm not answering. Open the door. Okay, I'll be right there, I say as I put my notebook down and get up from my bed. When I open the door, I am surprised to see that my mysterious visitor was in fact Leela. Oh, it's you, I say. Leela doesn't say anything, but I see her blue writing form in front of her, as usual. Can you come with me, she writes. There's something I need to show you. Sure, I say. Let me just lock the door. After I'm done locking the door behind me, I follow Leela, and we head towards her cell. Once we're both inside her room, she locks the door, and she points towards the wall behind her bed, and blue writing appears in front of her once again. Please place your hand on the wall, and tell me if you feel anything special, Leela writes. I place my hand on the wall, like she says, but I don't feel anything. Can you give me some sort of hint, I say? What am I looking for, exactly? Don't try to look, Leela writes. You need to feel it. Try concentrating your magical sense on your hand as you are touching the wall, and you will understand what I mean. As I do what Leela says, I suddenly realize that the wall is somehow resonating perfectly with my magical aura, and that it is reacting directly to my touch. Okay, you're right, I tell her. There's definitely more to this wall than you can tell just by looking at it, but it's not doing anything. Even if it's reacting directly to my touch, I feel like it's still waiting for something to happen. Leela nods. That's because the wall on the opposite side of the room is made in the same way, Leela writes. I think these walls react directly to our Lethithai auras, and that they are supposed to act as switches that need to be pressed at the same time by two different Lethithai. Switches for what? I ask. For opening a passage to the underground caverns beneath these tunnels, Leela writes. I've seen these kinds of switches before in other buildings made by Lethithai. They always open up secret passages, and I've heard that the caverns below us are where the arena's owner is keeping all the creatures locked up. If we could get a quick look, we would at least know what we'll be going up against. Or even better, we could sabotage the whole show by killing the creatures one by one, while they are all in their cages, instead of fighting them all in the arena. That does sound tempting, I say, but what if they catch us? Won't they be able to disqualify us for cheating? There are no rules saying that we can't kill the creatures before the arena event begins, Leela writes. However, Leela pauses. However, what, I ask? However, Leela continues, the rules of the arena do state that the safety of the participants is not guaranteed outside the arena designated for the division. So what you're saying is that they catch us in the act, they can unleash all their beasts upon us without any restraint. Leela nods. We can just go take a look, Leela writes, and if we see that there are too many guards, we'll just go back to our cells. I paused a bit to think. All right, I say, we'll go take one look. And we can decide after that. Leela nods again, and then she goes to the other end of the room, near the door, and extending her hand towards the wall. Are you ready, she writes. Of course. As ready as I'll ever be, I guess. Leela then places her hand on the wall. At the same time, I could feel some sort of magical current flowing through my palm. Almost immediately afterwards, the floor beneath us opens up, and the next thing we know, we're both falling into a pit, while we can see the floor to our room slowly closing itself back up, above our heads. After what seemed like 100-foot drop, we fall into an underground lake, with a big splash. As I tread water to keep myself afloat, I take a look above me to see if there's any way we can go back the way we came. The cavern's walls and ceilings around us seem to be littered with some sort of glowing blue crystals that are providing a fair bit of lighting throughout the area, but I see no obvious way to climb back up to our cell. The only things leading upwards are some ropes that are tied to a pulley which is hanging from the ceiling, but there's no way I could climb all the way up there on some rope. Suddenly, I can hear sound of repeating splashing water behind me. As I turn to look, I see Leela desperately flailing her arms through the water, with her mouth wide open, looks as if she'd forgotten how and that she couldn't talk and was trying to scream. Realizing what's happening, I quickly swim towards her, grab her by the shoulders in order to stop her arms from flailing. Leela, it's okay, I tell her. She's looking at me, terrified. Just grab onto me. I'll lead us to shore. It takes her a few moments, but she eventually calms down, and she grabs onto me with both her arms, holding me very tightly. Once I lead her safely to shore, we take a break to catch our breaths. We are both soaked to the skin, and the air around us here is definitely not as warm as in the surface. Ideally, I would make a fire in this situation, but is there any wood to be found in an underground cavern such as this? My question gets immediately answered as I turn around and see a wooden cabin a few hundred feet from where we're standing. There's a big pile of logs stacked up right in front of the door. How convenient. As I look towards the cabin, Leela pulls on my shirt to get my attention. When I turn to look at her, I see that she's lying on her knees, with her wet hair covering most of her face, and her head bowed. I'm sorry, she writes simply. About what, I ask. About dragging you into this. Leela, I say, if you hadn't dragged me into this, you would have ended up drowning in that lake. Leela keeps staring at the ground, as her writing slowly disappears. Listen, I say, there's nothing to be sorry about. I didn't think that this would be a trap either. I'm still not sure if it's a trap. Actually, I'm sure that it was designed as a trap originally, but who knows if anyone even remembers that it exists. Either way, even if we lost our way back, I don't think that we're in the wrong place. I only think that has changed that we also have to look for a way back up to our cells while we look for the creatures. As I talk to Leela, the ropes leading to the ceiling are starting to catch my attention. They're all coming out of the water, and the way they are distanced from each other makes me think that they are tied to some sort of platform at the bottom of the lake, possibly an elevator. I wonder if there's a lever or something at the bottom of the lake that could activate the elevator and get us out of here. Yeah, sure. I just thought of something, I say. Do you see those ropes? Leela nods. I think they might be tied to a platform at the lower end, I say. I want to check out the bottom of the lake and see if isn't a lever of some sort that I can use to activate the elevator. Can you wait for me here? Okay, Leela writes. I jump in the lake and swim back towards the ropes. When I reach them, I take a deep breath and I dive into the water. It seems that I was right. There really is a platform at the very bottom of the lake, tied to ropes. However, there is no obvious mechanism that looks like it could be used to operate the elevator. As far as I can see, the only thing that looks like some of the sort is a stone pillar next to the platform, with a hole at the top shaped like a spider. If this is the elevator requiring some kind of spider-shaped key in order to get activated, then I'm out of luck. After a few more unsuccessful rounds of circling the platform for signs of a lever, I finally run out of breath, and then I go back to the surface to get some air in my lungs. This is pointless unless I find that spider key, and there's no way I can operate the elevator. I might as well go back to shore. Did you find anything? Leela writes as she sees me get out of the water. I didn't see any levers, I say, as I squeeze water out of my shirt. The most I could find was a pillar with a spider-shaped hole in it. Unless we find a spider-shaped key of some sort, the elevator isn't going to be much use to us. Let's head for the cabin. Maybe we'll find some sort of flint or something to start a fire with. Leela nods as we both start walking towards the cabin. There's something that's been bugging me about this wooden cabin since I first saw it. Unless there are some trees miraculously growing in the cavern somewhere, this cabin could not have been built by someone who got trapped in here before us. This means that it was most likely built by the same person who designed the trap, or at least by the people who know about it, and who can reach this place by some other means. The fact that there's a bunch of logs conveniently placed right next to the lake into which we fell makes me believe this was done intentionally. Why would they go out of their way to make things more comfortable for us? Is this their way of granting us our last wish before they send the beast to kill us? As we reach the cabin, I go inside carefully, making sure that there are no traps. The cabin doesn't have any fireplace or chimney, but there's some firewood inside, and also some flint. I take the firewood and flint outside, and then I take some of the dried up moss from the cave's walls to provide a bit of kindling. Once we set up the fire, me and Leela sit ourselves down next to it, trying to get as close to the heat as we can. Hey, this is not half bad, I tell Leela. Only as the two of us do our best to warm ourselves by the fire. For a quick improvised fire that we lighted with flint and moss, I say we did pretty good. Leela nods. She then turns her back to the fire, trying to dry her hair without getting it burnt. You know, I've always meant to ask, I say, as I watch her hair dry. Is silver your natural hair color? I've never seen anyone with silver hair before, but then again, I can't say that I've met many Lusithai in my life. Leela doesn't answer me, and she just stares in front of her for a while. It's difficult to tell what expression she has on her face because of her hair in her eyes. Is this something that you don't want to talk about, I say? No, it's fine, Leela writes. She pauses. Have you ever heard of the Beacon of Hope, she writes? If you're talking about the orphanage that was experimenting with creating artificial mages, then yes, I've heard of it. I say, were you one of the Lusithai who worked there? Leela shakes her head no. I was one of the failed experiments. The reason why my hair is silver is because it lost color gradually, as a side effect of the several years in which they experimented on me, trying to make me into a mage. My hair used to be pitch black. Oh gods, I say, this is also the reason why you lost your voice? No, Leela writes, I was born this way, and I was given hell because of it. I don't remember much when I was little, but I do remember that the other Lusithai used to say about me. They said that I wasn't a real Lusithai. They said that the Lusithai are a pure race that cannot have any birth defects, and they suspected the reason that why I was born a mute was because I was, in fact, half Lusithai. I think that even the person that I once used to call my father had doubts about me. He never seemed to consider me his real child, and he always used to blame me for my mother for dying, and for leaving him to care for her daughter. That's probably why he didn't think twice when they asked if any of the Lusithai who worked at the Beacon Hope were willing to volunteer their children for experimentation. Wait, you just said you used to call him your father, I say, but you said yesterday that the reason why you were brought here is because you saved your father from the slavery. This person you saved, is he someone other than your natural father? The person I saved is the one I've been calling father for the past 10 years, Leela writes. He's the one who rescued me from the Beacon of Hope all those years ago when I was almost about to give up all hope. Is this why you you two became outcasts, I ask her. Leela nods. My father had been one of the caretakers at the beacon, Leela writes. When he couldn't bear to see us suffer any longer, he decided to help us escape, even if he knew that they would meant he would be marked as an outcast for the rest of his life. Were there any others who escaped with you, I ask her? Leela shakes her head. My father tried to convince other children to follow him, but they were too afraid to trust him, Leela writes. They must have thought that they were trying to trick him. He didn't have the time to talk to all of them, because one of the orphans ratted him out to the other Lustai, and he was forced to make a run for it. He made one last attempt to save the orphans, opening their cells before leaving this facility, but in the end, I was the only one who followed him. Didn't they try to capture you afterwards, I say? They did, Leila writes. That's why we were forced to live in the next few years of our lives, hiding in the woods of Varathia. At first, we would change our location every few days to make sure they didn't pick up on our trail. But after a few months, my father finally managed to obtain all the parts he needed to make a suggestion device. Suggestion spells are spells that can implant certain thoughts in the minds of people and make them think that these thoughts are in fact their own. The device that my father made could cast a spell that would make people avoid the area, because every time they went near it, they would get a sudden urge to go around it. Oh, I know this spell, I say. I have a friend who uses it all the time. This spell allowed us to finally settle down in one place, Leila writes. We built our own wooden cabin in the middle of the woods, near a river, and we even cultivated a garden. Some of the animals appeared to be immune to the suggestion spell, but they didn't seem to mind our presence. They even brought us food on occasion. So, how did your father get captured then? I ask. Did your suggestion spell malfunction? No, Leila writes. We moved out of the woods eventually. We heard these Lustai leadership had changed while we were away, and that the new leader, Meredith, had prohibited the hunt for Lustai outcasts. My father insisted that we move into a city, because then he would have easier access to the parts he needed to work on his devices. At the time, I did not understand why he would want to risk his safety just to work on some devices. I only understood his true purpose a few years later, when he gifted me my stat booster on my 16th birthday. Back then, I could only write a few words, but he's been perfecting it over the years. And eventually, it got to a point where I could put almost all of my thoughts into words by using my stat device. Oh no, I say, I just remembered something. What? Leila writes. The device, I say, as I quickly put the stat booster in my pocket. I completely forgot about the stat device. I start to shake the stat booster to make sure that it doesn't have any water in it, and then I test all the buttons one by one, without locking any stats, to see if everything still functions properly. When Leela understands what I'm doing, she starts to giggle silently. It will take more than a little water to make these devices stop working, Leela writes. Don't worry, your stat booster's fine. I'm sorry, I say. I've made sure that the stat device still works. I shouldn't have interrupted. You're about to tell me how your father was captured? Yes, Leela writes. You see, the thing is that even if hunts for outcasts was prohibited, that did not mean that the old grudges had been forgotten. The Lustai who worked with my father at the beacon had been meaning to punish him for a long time, but they couldn't do it openly. So what they did eventually was they forged some documents stating that my father had a huge debt to the owner of our house. They got the owner on their side, and he lied that we never paid our rent since we moved to his home. We didn't have any witnesses on our side, while the Lustai had all the witnesses and the fake documents they needed to prove that my father's guilt. Given that he couldn't pay his debt, my father was sold as a slave to one of the nobles of Thelius. I escaped before they could sell me too. And I've been living on the outskirts of the city for months, trying to find a way to free him. But it wasn't until the beginning of the tournament that I actually got a chance to do it. As Leela stops talking, I suddenly realize that I've been asking her all these questions, but I never even bothered to tell her about that I'm currently traveling with one of her old colleagues from the beacon. Should I tell her, though? Kate never told me anything about Leela before. She only mentioned Diane. Was this because she thought Leela was dead, or because she considered her an enemy for being a Lustai? I'm not even sure if I want to get this girl's hopes up, in case... yeah. I just realized I never told you about the Beacon of Hope. Do you remember meeting a girl named Kate while you were at the orphanage? Leah nods. I remember her, she writes. She always used to hang out with all the elemental siblings that later become part of the Lustai Elite Task Force. I heard that she was sent off to die in a distant jungle along with her other orphans, after the beacon got shut down. Well, your information isn't wrong, but I think that I might have led you to some wrong conclusions, I tell her. Kate is not dead. She survived. She's the one who told me about the beacon of hope. She survived? Leela writes as her face suddenly lights up with joy. Yeah, I say. I met Kate here at the tournament, and I'm currently traveling with her. Would you like to see her? The joyful expression on Leela's face slowly gets replaced with one of sadness as she looks away from me. I don't think she'd want to see me, Leela writes. I was being kept in a separate cell from the orphans at the orphanage, and we never got a chance to talk much. Besides, I don't think she'd want to meet a Lesthai like me, after all she's been through at the hands of the Lesthai at the orphanage. Hey, you can't know that until I ask her, I say. I'm a Lesthai too, remember? I'm still friends with her. Leela doesn't answer me, and she keeps looking away from me as before. Alright then, I say, as I get up from the ground. It's settled. As soon as we get out of here, I'll call her on the transceiver, and we'll arrange a meeting between the two of you. Let's get going. Your clothes should have dried by now. Leela nods hesitantly as she grabs my hand, and I help her up. We leave the fire behind, and we head towards the tunnels, beyond the wooden cabin. For the next 20 minutes or so, we walk in silence through the underground caverns, using a long stick that I had gotten from the cabin to test the ground for the traps in the area. We were completely dark. We had to rely on our stat devices to light up the way before us. But luckily, the glowing blue crystals that we'd seen before were also scattered throughout these tunnels, embedded into the walls, so we didn't have to worry about lighting for most of the time. As we advanced through the caverns, we eventually reached a tunnel that had prison cells on either side of it. The doors made of rusted iron grating. Inside the cells, what we saw instead of prisoners were creatures of all shapes and sizes. They were either growling at us menacingly or were studying us carefully, waiting to see what we'd do. There are dire wolves, gargoyles, giant rats, harpies, griffins, and saber-toothed tigers, all kept in different cells of the same tunnel. And something tells me this is only a small fraction of the vast array of creatures that the arena's owner has at his disposal. They're not guarded, Leela writes. I think that they weren't expecting any intruders from this direction. This means that there's still a chance we can leave this place undetected. Leela takes a rock from the ground and she starts to toss it into the air and then catch it repeatedly, while she looks towards one of the cells. I suddenly realize that the rock she's throwing in the air is just the right size to fit in the iron grating. With her max strength, she could possibly easily smash through one of the target's heads with a single blow. Now the question is, Leela writes, should we kill these creatures while we have the chance, or should we just concentrate on finding a way out? Kill the creatures! I say we kill them, I tell Leela. This is what we came for, after all, but we need to make sure that we do it quietly. The last thing we need to do is alert whatever guards there are in this place. I'll do it quietly, Leela writes, as she throws a rock at one of the saber-toothed tiger's heads. The rock cracks the tiger's skull, and the creature drops to the ground with a loud thump. Leela wastes no time, and she throws a second rock at one of the other tigers in the cell. At that moment, we begin to hear a deafening shriek from one of the harpies in the opposite cell. Harpies are hideous creatures that have an appearance of a woman with scales, wings, and claws. They might look almost human, but in reality, they couldn't be more different. They are just about as intelligent as the lowliest of reptiles, and they are twice as vicious. Their shrieks are most likely meant to alert whoever is in charge of guarding the cells. Leela quickly changes her target, and she begins to hit the harpies instead. But now the whole tunnel is being flooded with the roars and screams of all the creatures that are being held in the cells. This isn't good. Someone is bound to hear the noise. And if this someone has a way of opening the cells remotely, we'll be surrounded by these creatures in no time. I look around to see which of the creatures will be the most dangerous for us to face, if they are freed. The direwolves, the giant rats, and saber-toothed tigers are all deadly, but in the end, they're not much more powerful than regular animals. Leela is already dealing with the harpies, which leaves me to choose between the gargoyles and the griffins. Griffins are creatures that have bodies, tails, and legs of lions, with their heads, wings, and talons are those of eagles. They can be a nuisance, but their main power lies in attacking from above, which would be difficult to do here, because of the relatively low ceiling. Gargoyles, on the other hand, also have other means of fighting, besides aerial attacks. They could accurately be described as thinner ogres with wings and horns, while their strength is comparable to that of ogres as well. Even if their wings wouldn't be much help here, they could still crush our bones with their bare hands if they got close enough. I decide the gargoyles are by far the most dangerous of the bunch, so I pick a rock from the ground and throw it at one of their heads. The rock hits the gargoyle's head, but the blow is not powerful enough to kill the monster. It only succeeds in making it angrier. I throw another rock at it, but this time the gargoyle catches it with his right hand, Before I can find a third rock, all the iron grating suddenly opens at the same time, and the beasts slowly start coming out of their cells. The gargoyle that I've hit with the stone quickly dashes towards me and tries to grab me by the neck with its right hand. I did not expect to move so fast without using its wings, but luckily my reactions were good enough to be able to get away in time. If I remember correctly from what I was written in my notes, gargoyles normally tend to wait until they surround their victim before they make their attack. The one that dashed straight for me must have been only done so because I made it angry by hitting it with a rock earlier. As long as I don't let it surround me, the other two will likely hesitate to attack me, giving me the time to finish off their more hot-headed companion. I step back and make sure that the angry gargoyle follows me. I let it attack me again, and I make use of my quick reflexes to counter attack at the very last second, stabbing it in the neck with my enchanted dagger. As I had hoped, the other two monsters are still trying to position themselves on the opposite sides of me in order to flank me. I don't give them time to get into position. I dash towards one of them with my dagger at the ready. Its wings are a bigger and easier target to hit, so I step to the side and slash its left wing before I move in for the kill. The gargoyle does not manage to recover from the pain in time, and I finish it off with one swift strike. The third gargoyle tries to take me by surprise by running towards me, but it was not fast enough, and I slit its throat before I could even extend its arm towards me. Savage. Now that the griffins are dead, my next priority should be the griffins. Now that the gargoyles are dead, my next priority should be the griffins. Lila already seems to have her hands full with the fighting the saber-toothed tigers and the direwolves at once, so I can't have her fighting the griffins as well. That being said, I don't think that it would be a good idea for me to fight them all at once, either. I should at least find a way to distract them first. It's a good thing that I've been reading my notebook all day. Yesterday, I think that I might just know the trick to getting Griffin's attention. These creatures might look ferocious, but their behavior is that of a bird of prey, and I'm willing to bet that they've been left on the verge of starvation, so they'd be more aggressive when the arena begins. As long as I can get those giant rats to come this way, the griffins will be able to resist the temptation, and their natural instincts will surely kick in. I lay myself on the ground with my back facing the rats in order to check them to think them either dead or severely hurt from the battle with the gargoyles. It's working. A few of them are coming my way. The others have now noticed me as well, and they're rushing to get ahead of the rats that are already moving towards me. I need to keep calm, and I must not scare them away. Just a little closer. Just a little more. The griffins are not reacting. Maybe I should have cut one of the rats with my dagger, so the griffins can smell the blood. I get up slowly, staggering for a bit, in order to give the rats a false impression that I'm hurt from battle. The giant rats stop to look at me, uncertain of what to do. They don't seem comfortable attacking me while I'm standing up, but they don't look like they want to retreat either. Their few moments of indecision cost them dearly, because now the griffins have finally taken notice of them, and they are running at full speed towards their prey. The first griffin to arrive pounces on one of the rats and finishes it off with its beak. The rest of the rats are now scattering, but they're not fast enough to escape the griffins. Eventually, each of the 4 griffins manages to kill at least one of the giant rats, and they're all now busy feasting on their hard-earned spoils, completely ignoring the fact that I'm still here. I couldn't have asked for a better turn of events. The griffins are spread out from each other, and they're completely focused on eating their meals. All I need to do now is kill them off quietly, one by one, and they won't even get the chance to attack me. As I approach the griffin that's closest to me, with my knife in my hand, I can't help but think this is likely the one and only opportunity I'll ever have to ride a griffin. It's just lying here, not paying attention to me, and all I need to do is jump on its back. It'd be just like running with those griffin riders from the stories I used to read when I was a kid. I mean, they've got griffins locked up in here, so they surely must have tamed them enough for people to ride them on their backs. No, this is stupid. What am I even thinking? I'm trying to get myself killed? I try to get these thoughts out of my head as I get closer to the griffin and prepare to strike. The griffin is lying on its belly, with its front claws holding the dead rat, while using its beak to cut through the meat, still ignoring me. Maybe it wouldn't hurt if I just climbed on its back real quick. It's not like I'm ever going to get another chance like this. And if things go bad, I'll just jump right off and kill it with my dagger. There's nothing to go wrong if I just give it one quick try. I'm gonna kill it. Actually, on second thought, maybe it's just better if I just don't take the risk. I suppress my urge to ride the griffin, and I stab it in the throat as soon as it lowers its head to begin to eat. I aim for the vocal cords in order to make sure that it doesn't scream and alert the others, but I didn't manage to remain completely unnoticed. A griffin that was eating nearby saw what happened to his companion and is slowly advancing towards me. I wait for it to get closer, but I do not give it a chance to strike, and I quickly stab it in the chest with my enchanted dagger. The beast suddenly stops moving, and it slowly falls towards the ground with a blank stare on its face. Once again, the information from my notebook was spot on. If I hadn't read those detailed diagrams explaining the griffin's anatomy yesterday, I would have never been able to pinpoint the exact location of one's heart with such precision. Now, to take care of the other two. The remaining two griffins do not seem to pay much attention to what happened to their companions, and they're too busy enjoying their meals to see me slowly approaching them. I stab the first one in the back of the neck while it was still eating. The second one sees what happens, and it tries to get up on its feet, but I react quickly and stab it in the heart, killing it instantly. Leela was still fighting when I got done with the griffins, but she was on the verge of wrapping things up. The harpies were all dead, and there were only 2 dire wolves and 1 saber-toothed tiger left standing. As I approach her, Leela makes an impressive display of acrobatic prowess, doing a cartwheel over one of the wolves and landing with her feet on the other wolf's head, crushing it to the ground. And then she takes her 2 daggers and she throws them into the remaining wolf and tiger's heads, sending their lifeless bodies tumbling to the cavern floor. I took care of the griffins and the gargoyle, I tell Leela, as she retrieves her 2 daggers from the wolf and tiger's head bodies. There's some rats left, but they're not exactly a threat. I think we're done here. Not yet, Leela writes. We're not done until we find out who opened the cell doors. Well, if they were hiding in this room, we'd have seen them by now, I say. And there was only one way to get here from the lake. The only place where they could be hiding is beyond the tunnel. You're right, Leela writes. Let's get going. We make our way to the end of the tunnel, and we both ready our daggers, while we advance into the next area of the caverns. As we now enter a much narrower tunnel, we can't help but notice that there are 2 wooden chairs near an entrance which seem to have been knocked over in a hurry, and that there is a bowl of fresh stew lying on the ground untouched. Do you suppose the guys who were sitting on these chairs are the ones who opened the cell doors? I asked Leela. It's a possibility. Either way, we should be expecting an ambush as soon as we exit this tunnel. Get ready. Just as Leela anticipated, at the moment we got out of the tunnel, we were greeted by 6 sharp lances pointing in our direction. The lances were being wielded not by humans, but by hideous monsters that were the size of humans, only with grey skin, long pointy noses, large fangs, and the appearance of savages. The monsters that were facing us were trolls. Trolls are not as smart as goblins, but they're definitely smarter than ogres. And what is particularly dangerous about them is that the fact they have incredibly regenerative powers. Unless you cut their heads clean off or use fire to kill them, they can even grow back a limb if you give them enough time. They are not the kind of enemies that I was hoping to meet down here. Throw down your weapons, one of the trolls says in common language, with what is probably the most broken accent that I've ever heard of in my life. Me and Leela exchange a look, but we hold onto our weapons while the trolls seem to be growing impatient. Throw down your weapons now or you'll be executed on the spot, the troll says. Before we get a chance to answer the trolls, I suddenly hear Flower's voice coming from behind the monsters. Somehow, I had a feeling that you would be the source of all this commotion, the voice says. Flower, I ask. As soon as I stop talking, a water whip comes out of the nowhere, and it beheads all of the 6 trolls in a single whip. After the trolls' bodies fall on the ground, I get a good look at Flower, and I see that her eyes are bright blue. Flower is asleep, Luna says. She gives Leela a quick glance before she turns her gaze to me. I see you've made a new friend, Luna says. Yes, I say. I met her in the holding cell below the arenas. She's a fellow gladiator from my division. My name is Leela, Leela writes, as she extends her hand towards Luna. Pleased to meet you. Charmed, Luna says, in her usual disinterested tone, without showing any surprise at the girl's peculiar way of talking. She then turns away, leaving Leela with her hand extended in the air while she heads back towards the way she came. What are you waiting for, Luna says, when she sees that we're not moving. Follow me. Wait, where are we going, I ask her. There's a friend of mine who I'd like you to meet, Luna says. I think you will find that his purpose in coming here is rather similar to yours. What friend, I say. And what do you mean by similar? I don't get it. What did you come down here for? Why, Barry, I thought that much of that would have been obvious by now, Luna says. We come to sabotage the arena. Well, how about that? They've come to sabotage the arena to help them win, which is nice. But man, the arena hasn't even started yet, and there was a lot of action, so that's pretty good. Well, I'm gonna leave it off there. I will proceed to chapter 3 in my next video. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye.